Welcome in, email geeks, to the Kevin Mandeville Show, live here on YouTube every Tuesday and Thursday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Give a subscribe by hitting the button below, and go to kevinmandeville.com/newsletter. You can get all of the shows delivered to your inbox, get all the show notes, links, everything we discussed. I'm very happy to have another guest on today's program. Let us welcome in Ann Tomlin. Ann, welcome aboard.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks so much for coming on, and you are currently like the founder, owner, operator of Emails Y'all, which is maybe one of the best names out there for any company.
Thanks.
So we're going to get into the awesome, wild world of freelancing for email specifically, which I think is an under-talked about topic today. But first, we always like kicking things off with our guests, learning about how you got into HTML, CSS, sort of web markup, and then email development, unless you are the one person who grew up wanting to become an email marketer.
No, my degree is in classics like Latin and Greek, so I wanted to be a Latin teacher. But when I graduated, there wasn't really any openings available for Latin teaching in the locations that I actually wanted to be in. So took like just a tech support job at Apple, and my brother, who had his own web dev company, threw a book of PHP at me and was like, "Here, learn this." And it never quite stuck. Like the back end of it never quite stuck, but I did start doing front end, and I really enjoyed that. So I got my first web dev job, and about 3 jobs later, I was asked to build a Christmas email and to make it look very nice. And when I first started, I loved it from the very beginning and was just like, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of forever. This is my jam.
Wow. So you fell in love with email instantly.
Instantly.
Wow. That's really cool. What did you really like about it? Like, what attracted you to it?
It's mostly the challenge of it. And it's also it spatially makes more sense to me. Like just with it's a series of boxes is what I tell people. Yep. And that just spatially makes more sense to me.
All right. And so what year was this that you sort of started that email development and getting into the world of email?
I think it was about 2008 was when I had my first web dev job. And then I started email about 2010 or so.
Very cool. Yeah. So that's like around the same time as me. It's kind of when I started getting into it as well. Yeah. So that's kind of cool. So, it's a very different world, right? There weren't as many resources back then, or just educational things. I mean, how did you learn more about email back at that point in time? Because there wasn't the community that there exists today for it.
Yeah. Definitely. What I did was just Google a ton of stuff, and ended up on Stack Overflow a decent amount. And also I joined Twitter. And since there was a community, it was small, but there was a community on Twitter, and that really upped my game. Yeah.
Yeah, now we have Slack with thousands of people on there, so email.geeks.chat if you aren't in there now. But yeah, back pre-Slack, it was all just using Twitter and the Email Geeks hashtag for the most part, which was awesome. And yeah, I mean, probably 100 people or less being active with it back then, which is pretty funny. So cool. So I'd love to dive into your workflow today. So what does it look like? What tools do you use? What editor do you use? How do you test your email? Sort of like beginning to end, I'd love to just know what your typical workflow and tooling that you use.
Sure. So whenever I get a new client, I usually trade some emails with them to try and figure out what they want and where they are in the email space. Like, am I gonna have to educate, or do they already know what's going on? So once I determine that, I usually ask for designs, and they give me the designs, and then I evaluate them. Think how long is this going to take me to build? Tell them how long I think it's going to take to build. They say cool, and I start building in Litmus Builder. I do use BB Edit every once in a while, but that's more sort of like to format the text and to find web fonts. If like they haven't given me their web fonts, I just go to their website and try to find them. So yeah, I use BB Edit for mostly that. And good thing about Litmus Builder is that they show you live previews on the side, so that's invaluable to me to be able to do that. And I always usually have an Apple client, all the Outlooks, and a Gmail app open, because those are the ones that are gonna, like, Apple for the control,
Yeah.
and then the
Right.
ones that are gonna cause me issues.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that covers your bases with a lot of just those three for sure.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole lot that I want to get into to dissect a bit for that process. Let's see. Oh, I just forgot what I was going to ask you. All right, so you're using Litmus to test, obviously, and then it probably varies based on like what ESP you're using. What are you using? So talking about the communication with clients, sort of the project management side, what tools are you using to manage that process?
Usually it's just email and phone calls. But if they have a project management system already in place, like Asana, then I'll gladly start using that. I've used Asana, Jira, probably everything,
Right.
that's out there.
All right. So you'll adapt to whatever sort of system they have into place. You don't have anything that you're trying to get them to adopt or
Right.
use. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so you mentioned talking about that discovery phase a little bit. And so you're specializing on simply the development side of things. You're not doing a lot of design work.
Correct. Yeah. Usually they already have designs ready for me. And if I see something in those designs that's just going to cause a headache or, can't be done, and a headache in the sense of a headache for them, not a headache for me, I will gladly continue to, plug away at an issue. But, I want to make sure that I'm giving my clients the best experience for the least amount of money.
Right.
So, but yeah, yeah.
So how often do you sort of run into that? Because that's obviously, I would imagine, a pretty commonplace thing, to where there's some type of intricate design where there needs to be a lot more considerations on how you not only handle it in the different email clients, but do you want to do this at all? I mean, how do you have that conversation? How much education is typically required? I'm just curious how you sort of handle that aspect, because I'm sure it's a big part.
Yeah, it really is. And most of the time, it's a phone call. If I see, issues that could be resolved with like a slight tweak to the design or whatever, usually, I'll call them, say, hey, can we change these things? It'll make it easier for you to use this template later, or something like that. Or, Outlook just wanted to let you know you aren't going to get, rounded corners in Outlook and such. So with the discovery call, the first one of, them contacting me, that's usually when I get a feel for where they are in the email space. And I've worked with people who really just immediately kept talking to me about, HTML and CSS and exactly how they want it, and the H1 tags and everything. And I've also had, people who have just a basic wireframe and say, hey, can you make an email out of this?
And so are you trying to, I guess it may vary from client to client, but typically, what are you typically doing? Are you trying to do a one design that looks the same everywhere, or are you doing designs that will look differently in different email clients?
Most of the time, I usually try to make everything look generally the same in all email clients, with mobile, of course, having stacking. But yeah, I mean, if they're periodically, I have asked them, hey, how about we do, this thing differently in mobile? And, sometimes they'll be into it, sometimes not.
Yeah. And are you typically, for your type of work, or I know you offer a bunch of services, so we should probably get into what you offer, but are you typically doing more sort of like templating systems, like you mentioned, or one-off sort of bespoke type of campaigns? What kind of work are you typically finding yourself in?
Honestly, it's a mix. There is no one that I get more of than the other. I get a lot of MailChimp and Campaign Monitor template requests, and some that are just like, hey, we already know what we're doing in our ESP. We just want you to make the one-off. Oh, and I have done modular systems as well, which are really fun for me. So
Yeah. What do you like about that?
I, I I'm not exactly sure. It just feels nice, to be able to have to be able to give them a shell and them be able to make a ton of different emails with it. It just feels nice.
Yeah, it's a cool thing to make one, and then that could become X number of hundreds, thousands of emails just off of that one type of system, which is
Right.
pretty cool. Um, let's see what else. I keep forgetting things I want to ask right now. There's so much I want to get into with this freelancing stuff. It's super interesting. Oh yeah, so like what with your services, how they're laid out? I mean, what are all the because I know you sort of frame them in a when I was looking at your website a bunch of different ways. Again, emailsyall.com. Go to the website,
Yes.
check it out. So what are the different types of services that you offer, and how do you sort of frame and pitch your services?
Yeah, most of the time, my clients have already gone to my website and looked at it. But the great majority of what I end up doing and what I offer is making modular systems, making templates, one-offs, and also I will, try and figure out what's going on with your code. If you have no idea what's going on, I will gladly look at your code and try and figure out what's up. And also, I mean, I put Outlook in a specific category because Outlook really requires a lot of different, MSO, things. So yeah, so I kind of frame that in its own little sort of thing. But yeah.
And so for that discovery call that you have, like what are some of the types of questions you're asking them to try to assess where they're at?
Yeah, first one is, hey, what kind of designs do you have? What do you have in mind for what you want this email to do? Because sometimes, they will have an email, like a design already in place, but they want, the goal of the email is, something completely different. So, in the circumstance of like CTAs, we really want people to click this button, but it's all the way at the bottom. So I'm going to take a little time, say, hey, this could be improved by bringing the CTA up into, the first 400 and some odd pixels. Thanks, Action Rocket. Uh, um, but yeah, that's usually one of the main parts. And also, what kind of ESP do you use? Am I going to have to make some like AMP script or put in the MailChimp required markup? That sort of thing. And yeah, and mostly, where are you in email? Do I, can I let can I give you some expertise, on what you might want in the future or, with that email or in the future?
Yeah. And so are you typically working with a certain team or team size, or is that something that varies?
That varies quite a lot. Usually, I try to have one contact for each client so that all of the feedback and everything comes from one person. And that way I don't get a ton of, like edits or feedback that are contradicting each other, because the client has 4 or 5 people that are working on this, but, have different ideas of how an email should be. So usually I ask for one particular contact to get, to have a discourse with.
Right. Yeah, that's good. I'm
Yeah.
definitely I'm making a mental note right now for myself for future use for
Yeah.
things like that. That's good. And so for that discovery call, and then you said you're presenting arguments for them. I know you mentioned you're typically using email and phone call to communicate, but are you using anything for your own personal notes or documenting things to help present your case? Like, would you ever use, I don't know, a PowerPoint or keynote, a presentation, or some other type of tool to help make your case on things, to help explain, here are the trade-offs, pros and cons of taking approach X or Y?
Right. Yeah. I don't usually have like something set up. I will adapt what I'm saying to their particular situation. About email, what can I, what can be done in your email and that sort of thing. It's, the discovery call is definitely gonna help with that.
Gotcha. And then, so I'd love to just talk about sort of that approval process now, since you brought it up. It's kind of fits in nicely here. So, so if you're typically communicating with one person, that can definitely, that probably helps a lot. So you establish that right from the beginning.
Right.
But how do you, when it comes to here's a final email, how do you get approval for that? Or if there's amendments, how do you manage that process with the client? Like, do you give them a certain number of amendments? Like, how do you sort of structure for that scenario?
I have unlimited, or I offer unlimited edits. So within reason, if I'll go through many rounds just to get it exactly right to what the client wants. And once that it's, the client is happy, it depends on, if I have access to their ESP or not. If I do, I'll just put it directly in the ESP. But if not, then I'll just send them, a zip of all of all of the files.
Cool. Speaking of ESPs, what's like your favorite and least favorite ESP that you have to work with?
Least favorite, sorry, Campaign Monitor, your markup's really hard. Yeah, not being able to, or being able to, the markup allows you to use a very pared down editor. So that's why they're not my favorite. But favorite, I guess, would probably be Salesforce. It's just, put out, or it's laid out in a reasonable way that makes sense to me.
All right,
it's cool. Also super easy to do, modular systems within SFMC.
Yeah, well, you get a lot of power in that system, right?
Yeah.
Like it may have a steeper learning curve for a lot of people, but once you learn it, there's a lot of stuff you can do with that. All right, so when we come back, we're going to dive more into this world of freelancing, talk more about sort of the freelancing life aspect of things like expenses, insurance, things like that. But first, I just want to let you know, the show proudly sponsored by Email Tees, official apparel for Email Geeks. It's a fun project I'm working on, and so things like this hat right here, little love emoji hat. You can get this on shirts, long sleeves, hoodies, mugs, you name it, pretty much head to toe, even socks. You can get yourself covered in Email Geek apparel. So go to emailtees.com or follow on Twitter or Instagram at emailtees. We just launched the Valentine collection featuring love-inspired designs to show how much you love email. There's no better way to say I love email than rock some Email Tees apparel. Everybody's getting it. So please do it. Please support it. It helps support this show, and I'm using it for other content initiatives. It's going to be sponsoring our first meetup in Boston later this month, hoping to sponsor other meetups across the country and do things, more interesting things with this show, blogging. It's really, I'm helping these funds to help support content initiatives for the community. So all your support's appreciated. Just go to emailtees.com. All right, let's get back into the freelancing world. So yeah, I guess around maybe the client education aspect bit, I'd like to dive into that maybe a little bit more. I mean, how do you educate people around some of these unique challenges that email faces? Because I'm sure for a lot of people, they have no idea that some of these things exist or these limitations. And you probably have a range of people who have sort of the technical background to understand, or the design background even to understand what you're talking about or what you mean for what's possible or what's not possible. So, So how do you sort of typically go about educating people when you run into issues of them not understanding that there needs to be trade-offs, here and there.
Right. Usually I feel like a personal touch is the best way of doing things rather than just sending an article to the client. I really feel it's good customer service to explain, usually via a call, email if necessary. But yeah, to explain in my own words why, something is the way it is, or why I'm suggesting you do it this way. A lot of the time I actually bring up email market share is something I talk about, very often with my clients, to figure out, where are the trade-offs going to be for your audience. That's a big thing I make, I talk about is your audience, who is getting your email. So, yeah, so periodically I'll bring in, do the emailmarketshare.com, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Emailclientmarketshare.com. Yep.
Email client market share. Sometimes I'll send them that to give some perspective on what trade-offs should be done here.
Yeah. How often do customers even have email analytics of their own that you can work off of when you typically are looking at projects? Is that something that they have or not have?
Yeah, actually, most of the time, people already do know their audience, which is
cool.
super helpful.
Yeah, that is super helpful. It's a much easier place to begin the conversation with, right?
Yeah, and also, I mean, as soon as they say, "Oh yeah, most of our stuff is on," most of our views are on iOS, I'm like, "Great, we can do fun stuff."
You're a B2C company, awesome. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So when you're structuring for your freelancing, how do you typically bill for projects? Are you a fan of hourly or sort of project value-based pricing?
I do hourly. Even though when I first get a new client, I give them an estimate on the amount of hours that I think it's going to take. I'm not that great at estimating.
Well,
and
it's
so
hard, right?
It's super hard. So because you never know what weird quirk is going to come up. So I feel like, telling people, kind of like if I say it's going to be 8 hours, at 4 hours, if I know it's going to take more than 8 hours, I'm going to tell them, and be like, hey, this is going to take a bit. I've run into a, weird quirk.
Yeah. With your estimating, do you ever go or do you try to be as pinpoint accurate with a prediction of an estimate that you'll provide, or do you be like, okay, I think it might be like this and I'm going to add on X number of hours because I know something crazy is going to pop up? How do you typically try to estimate the scope of things?
Usually if it's a large project, I'll add some padding at the end. But if it's a really small, email that really is just like a header and text, then I can give a pinpoint and try very hard to give them exactly how much time I think it's going to take.
Gotcha. So it'll depend on the scale of a particular project.
Right.
So that's interesting. So how much would you say, I don't know if you could give like a breakdown of how much would be smaller projects versus larger projects for the type of clients that you do work for? What do you think is sort of the breakdown?
I would say that about 70% large projects and 30% smaller ones. Cool. So yeah, I have some, retained clients. It's not exactly like they pay me per hour. I bill them at the end of every month. But yeah, so usually I'll have some of those clients that have the same thing, same layout. Maybe one thing is new, and they come back every month and ask, hey, can you put in this new content, that sort of thing. With those ones, I can be like super pinpointy about it. Gotcha. Like even down to be like, yeah, this is going to take 45 minutes.
Right. Okay, yeah, that's cool. That's interesting. For some of the tools that you might use, things like testing services, how do you manage the who pays for that? Do you pay for that out of the box and include it in your sort of billing pricing, or do you require that clients pay for those services up front?
I go ahead and pay for it myself and use my fee as to cover that.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, I feel yeah, I have more control over
Yeah.
over it, over what they see and what they do, uh,
Right.
to my code. So that's why I choose to do it myself.
Yeah, well, yeah, the benefits there are that you can mark it up, right? And then, yeah, you have the control of just keeping it all under one hood. It probably decreases the amount of, I don't know, support time or however you would classify that, right? That overhead time of, oh, I need access to account XYZ, oh, the password change here, there, and there. I'm sure there's a lot of benefits to just managing it all on your own that way.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And so what for billing and invoicing, what kind of software or tools do you use to manage that with clients?
Well, I use Cushion for time tracking. It's super useful. It's a very graphic type of tool for estimating, like planning out what your week is going to be like, or multiple months in the future. Just like how much work can I take on at one time? I don't want to get into a situation where I've overpromised with too many clients. So having that scheduling capability is very helpful. They also do time tracking. You push a little button, it starts starts tracking your time. But yeah, I find that invaluable. And Cushion does have invoicing, but I find that using QuickBooks, this is for myself, find that QuickBooks is easier with invoicing. It allows bank transfers and credit cards, and the credit card fees are real low. So yeah, so I find that QuickBooks is better. Also, my accountant can just go into QuickBooks and see what's up.
Yeah, I hate accounting, so anytime I can offload any work with that, I look for it now on that. And so for it probably sounds like from what you've said already, it probably varies depending on the scale. But how would you typically structure the pricing? Would you just invoice after the fact? Would you do something like 25% up front, 25% midway, and then half later? What kind of structure do you have for payments?
I usually just bill after. So there are some clients who really prefer to do, half now, half later. But personally, I have never come into a situation in which I did not get paid. So
Wow,
this seems
really?
to be working. Yeah, this seems to be working quite well. I also have clients that are established.
Okay,
Most of
yeah.
my clients are established companies. So yeah, I think that's probably why they end up totally paying. And I've never run into that situation.
Right. Okay. So you don't have horror stories of clients being 90 days past due or anything like
No,
that?
no. I also am kind of like up on it. So if I see that they viewed it, viewed the invoice, but they
Okay.
haven't paid, I'm just like, hey,
Yeah.
it's
Poke,
me again. I need my money.
nudge. That's good. And that's actually, yeah, incredibly powerful. The fact that you can see whether or not they have actually viewed
Hmm.
an invoice gives you a lot of leverage in that scenario.
Right.
So how much time is spent between actually executing and producing work versus trying to attract new clients?
So with attracting new clients, I do referrals. Luckily, I have had the best luck with attracting clients. It's all word of mouth, and I try to keep my website up to date with the most recent examples of my work. And I think that that's mostly how I get clients. So I don't spend too much time, trying to attract new clients. If anything, I would say I to I do Twitter a lot and get a decent amount of clients that way as well. So I definitely have to make time to do some tweeting. But yeah, I would say honestly, the thing that isn't development that has the most time suck is answering questions, and responding to people. Sometimes I'll spend like 3 hours just responding to my clients, and that's 3 hours of not coding, that I wish I could be doing. But hey, you gotta answer questions.
Yeah. How do you handle that time too? Do you have do you time block your day to have that communication? Do you just do it all spur of the moment? How do you handle sort of segmenting your time?
So in the mornings, I answer all questions all the emails that have come in. Then I like to try and block off a good 2 hours or so where I focus directly on coding. And I'll see a message, come in, but hey, I've got to, focus right now. So after I get to a kind of a good stopping point, I'll go back to answering emails. Yeah, so it's kind of structured, but kind of not.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I can imagine it's hard because those are two very different modes, and
Yeah.
I'm sure, unlike working at a company, which is basically all of my experience, you can very easily time block that. But when you have clients who have their hair on fire or whatnot with all these demands and things that which they perceive to be the most urgent thing all the time, which sometimes it can be if you're up against deadlines, but sometimes it's not. Have you ever had really hard deadlines to meet or stories there around last minute things?
Yes, there have been many a time when I was first starting out, when I first started Emails Y'all and went completely freelance. I said yes to everything, and everything was due at the exact same time. So yeah, there have been times at which I've stayed up, the entire day, the entire night to go ahead and keep coding.
Wow.
to meet those deadlines. So yeah, that was in the beginning, and now I'm with Cushion. I feel like that doesn't happen very often.
Gotcha. Do you think that was necessary in the beginning when you were getting started, just to get off the ground, or would you have tried to been a little bit more firm with establishing balance or boundaries or whatnot?
Yeah, I feel like that was kind of a necessary evil at that point. Like I needed to learn that lesson, and there was no other way I was going to learn that. Like you can have people tell you, "Hey, don't overschedule," but you need to know, that you need to feel it to really get that and realize that your time is worth something, and it's you need to give reasonable timelines.
So what would you say overall with this experience? Because you've been doing freelancing for how long now? How many years?
Well, I've been totally freelancing about just freelancing under Emails Y'all 2 years or year and a half. And before I did about a year of freelancing on the side with a full-time job.
Right. So what would you say are some of the pros and cons to the freelance life?
Pros are, being able to schedule my time how I like. If I want to go have lunch with a friend, I can. Now I feel there's a lot more. Not so much, since I'm the manager now. There's no oversight, which is good because I get to make the rules, but also, there's nobody holding me accountable, right there being like, hey, shouldn't you be working?
Right.
The cons, I would say are, I don't get out very often. I have to definitely make a point of seeing friends or getting outside at all.
Yeah.
So that's definitely and you need that time. You need the downtime because I can get into a situation where I will code for 8 hours straight and like just tunnel vision code zone type of thing. So I have to, take care of myself as well as my client, So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
a very
to
good
have to
point.
make time for myself.
Right. And before doing full-time freelancing, had you been doing remote work before?
Yeah, actually, I started in like 2016. Somebody asked me, on Twitter, "Hey, do you freelance?" And I thought, sure, why not? And then just got so much work progressively that I couldn't do my full-time job and freelance. So, and I thought this is the time in which to make that jump.
Yeah.
I've got the situation lined up exactly right. Like it's time to take that jump. If it doesn't work out, shucks. But it did.
Well, that's awesome. So I'd love to dig into that moment though. So what was the threshold and how big of a jump? I mean, because I'm sure there's at some point to where you're starting out, but even if it was just a part-time thing, you have to project a little bit and be like, well, I think I can make this work, but there's a little bit of a risk. So what to you was that threshold in that moment of, I gotta bite the bullet, I gotta do this now, I think this is a thing?
Uh, that moment was when I was asked to do a interactive email on the side, like on my freelancing interactive email. And I was like, this is not gonna, I need to spend all of my time, figuring this out. It was a very complicated type of email there, but so yeah, I really just made the jump at that point. Luckily, what had happened was I was working contract with Sirius XM, and it lined up perfectly with the end of my contract. So, but that was really just circumstance. Like I probably would have canceled that contract and gone freelance if that hadn't happened.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Wow. So the interactive email bit was like, wow, this is here to stay. This is something serious.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like this is a time situation. So obviously, if somebody's asking me to do an interactive email, I'm pretty good at this. So, and
Yeah,
maybe
that's
I can
cool.
do it myself.
Okay. All right. Yeah. That's very interesting. So what advice would you give to others who are thinking about freelancing or starting out freelancing? Maybe they're doing a bit on the side. Like, what advice would you give to people to become successful freelancers?
Uh, First, make the jump. If you will figure it out on the way. It's really hard to make that first jump and be sure that you want to do this, but really try it for a year. About two litmuses ago, Clinton gave a talk about freelancing, and he was like, just try it for a year, see if it fits. And that was very inspiring. And I thought, all right, I'm going to try it for a year, and it's worked out really great. So take that jump. Also, make sure that you have the tools you need already lined up before you take like your first client. So you want to have the Adobe suite, because people will give me not only PSDs, they'll give me all types of files. So you need to have that, and you need to have it available right then. So have everything lined up perfectly so you feel like, all right, I can take on my first client now. And mostly don't suffer any fools. Really, if you get into a situation in which you say this is no longer worth it, it's okay to to put yourself first. I had a situation in which the client was really asking me to do above and beyond. They wanted to use my litmus to show their client. So it was I was working with an agency. So they ran my litmus bill up to the point in which I had to get an enterprise, account. And so that's it. Looking back on it, it's like, why did I take that kind of, that kind of talk and expectation. I really should have, been very upfront and this is what I'm able to do. And if they couldn't handle it, oh well. You've really got to have a hard backbone, which I didn't have at first. When I first took my, first clients, I was just, sure, I'll do anything, whatever. But really, you got to have a backbone of what you are, willing to do and, what kind of expectations you have of your client, because they have expectations of you, you have expectations of them. And if it doesn't line up, you got to let them go. Yeah. That's really hard lesson to learn, because you think, oh, I have to be good to I have to take everything because it's a client and I might not ever have clients. You will have clients again. Don't worry. Yeah. Like you will have other clients. If somebody is just causing you way too much grief, finish up what they've asked you to do, and then let them go, and very nicely.
That's awesome. All right, so we're about out of time. I just want to run through some rapid fire questions to end this show with you. So what is your favorite email that you've ever designed and or built?
The best one that I've ever done was for Chipotle. It was a really fun, it was a grid type of thing with all the different types of ingredients that they have. It was really fun.
Yeah, cool. What's your favorite email that you've ever received?
Yeah, I've ever received? Geez. Oh, you know what? It was the table TRTD. That was. Is it later this month yet? When Gmail announced their media query support, they made an email that was like, "Is it later this month? Yes or no?" And it stayed on no. It was red on no. It was a little flip, thing. And when it allowed when media query support came, it switched over to yes. And I just thought that was really really a fun thing, to get.
Fun thing, very very fun newsletter for sure.
Yeah. I went back multiple times. That's one of the few emails in which I've gone. I went back.
Yeah, I love that concept of getting subscribers to return back to an email for something. I'm very fascinated with that design strategy. And then finally, what's your favorite newsletter that you subscribe to?
I have multiples. So I'd say Really Good Emails, Action Rocket, Phrasee, and Litmus. I can't really rank them. That's in no particular order.
Okay. Well, that's cool. Well, all those emails are in the show notes, so check those out. But otherwise, Anne, thank you so much for coming onto the program. This was very fascinating. I think the most in-depth talk about freelancing with email we've had yet. So yeah, thanks so much. And you can check you out, emailsyall.com, and then your Twitter handle is...
Pompey79, yes. Holdover from college.
Right, which has been here on the show the whole time, but I just forget off the top of my head. So, all right, cool. Well, thank you so much for coming. Reminder, every Tuesday, Thursday, we go live, 12 p.m. Eastern time, and subscribe, kevinmandeville.com/newsletter. We will see you all next time, Email Geeks. Bye.